This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, now it's recording. Oh, there's Roxanne.
Hi, Roxanne.
Hi. I was gonna say good morning, good evening, everyone.
Hello, Roxanne.
It's been one of those days.
It's been a long day, right, Roxanne?
Yeah, and I'm so sorry. It took at a little bit of probably Roxanne challenges, not computer challenges to log on. So I apologize, and I appreciate everyone's patience for being here. I hope I didn't keep everyone waiting.
Oh, not at all.
Okay, thank you.
We're ready when you are, Chair Torres.
All right, welcome to the Senior Community and Senior Services Commission meeting on February 8th. We'll start the meeting with a call to order. And we're going to do a Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah, we hear you, Mike. So if everyone could remain muted when they're not speaking, that would help to keep all the echoing. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A few seconds of our silent prayer, meditation. Thank you. And we'll start with our roll call. So feel free to unmute to...
Mayor will be doing the roll calls this evening.
Okay.
Chair Robert Torres. Vice
Here.
Chair Carol Muller.
Here.
Commissioner Hector Diaz. Commissioner Sharon Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Jennifer Gutierrez.
Here.
Commissioner Cecilia Munoz.
Here.
To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN followed by the
Commissioner
pound
Betty
or
White.
hash sign. If you do not have a PIN, just press
Commissioner
pound or
Alfred
hash.
Williams.
This conference will now be recorded.
Commissioner Gail Mason.
Here.
Okay, we have we have 6 commissioners present. 1, 2, 3, and 4 absent.
Thank
If
you.
we can also get verification who caller 3 and caller 4 is.
Who is our callers?
Hello, everyone. This is Mike Cressup. I don't know if I'm 3 or 4, but my computer audio wasn't working, so I called in.
Hi, Mike. We have speaker Davina Chow. Did I pronounce it right? Davina Chow. And Barbara Olmos for today.
All right, so that moves us to the oral communications part of the meeting. So if you wanted to unmute yourself, Davina, you have 3 minutes to make your comments to the commission. Oh, and it says Davina has left. So who was our other speaker?
Commissioner Torres, I do have their comment in email if you'd like me to read it into the record.
Okay, let me just check once more. Yeah, she did leave maybe she got disconnected. Maybe we could come back if she gets reconnected and we can move on to the next speaker because I know we have one present, right?
Sean Lee, I think, is just a visitor.
And was Barbara on the line?
I have Barbara Olmos, so I have a email to read into the record.
Oh, okay.
So from Barbara Olmos, their comment is, my son is 15 with special needs. West Covina has top soccer in West Covina, but that is the only sport we have for our kids. After soccer was over, the parents wanted to know what was next, but there isn't anything else. I started renting a half court for basketball just so the kids would have something to do. Now, unfortunately, the courts are blocked with volleyball and aren't available to us. West Covina needs more activities for our kids and teens and young adults. That is the end of that comment. If you like, I can read Davina's comment into the record as well.
Please.
Second speaker is Davina Chow. And she wrote, I am a pediatric occupation therapist residing in the city of West Covina. I work with children who have a range of development and medical diagnoses. Families I work with who have children within the population often have difficulty accessing typical community events, resources, and connecting with other children and families who share similar needs. Being able to connect with others in the community and having opportunities to participate in events and activities that are easily accessible to the general population is crucial for overall well-being of children with special needs and their families. While I'm not familiar with the current plans for more inclusive community events, I would like to also encourage existing community resources to consider making their events, programs, and spaces more inclusive and accessible to children, teens, and adults with special needs. I ask you also continue reflecting on the equity in our community and society at large if children with special needs are inadvertently excluded from events simply because they are disabled or diagnosed. We should strive to continue making our space and events inclusive and accessible to all. In creating new events for individuals with special needs in the community, I would encourage organizers to connect with individuals with special needs and their families to hear their needs, as well as consulting with trained professionals who can provide skilled input. Thanks, Davina. That is all the comments I received for the day.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I believe that is all we have for oral communications, unless anyone on the line that I didn't see or call out that's here for oral communications. All right, so we'll move on to our consent calendar. And first we'll do the approval of meeting minutes. So item number 1 will be November 9th, 2021 Community and Senior Services Commission meeting minutes. So does anyone have any comments on the minutes?
This is Commissioner Munoz. I have one correction. Under Commissioner Reports, I'm listed as being absent, but I was present.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
I think that was I want to say item number 2 of the minutes. So that was the January 11th, 2022 Community and Senior Services Commission minutes. So we'll make a note. And then, Deborah, I know I mentioned the comments I had on item 1, the approval of the minutes. Should I go over those again, or? I noticed the changes weren't made in this round, but did you have notes on the corrections to the meeting minutes, or did you want me to go over them? You might be muted.
Yes, if you could go over those for the record, please.
Okay, sounds good. I just made some notes for the item number 6 on the meeting minutes, which is the November 9th meeting minutes. I wanted to make a correction that the discussion and the final decision was for a senior spotlight program as opposed to a community spotlight program. So the decision was to have a senior spotlight program. Also, it should be in the same item. It should be Vice Chair Molnar that made the second. It says Vice Chair Torres. And item number 9 on the minutes, I think we removed Commissioner Williams, not Nguyen. And the last item I have is for future meetings, it says July 12th. It should be July 11th.
Okay.
That's all I got. And then item number, so we'll make a motion to approve item number 1. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve item number 1?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Munoz, I second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Robert Torres,
Aye.
Vice Chair Carol Mueller,
Aye.
Commissioner Hector Diaz, absent. Commissioner Sherry Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jennifer Gutierrez,
Aye.
Commissioner Cecilia Munoz,
Aye.
Commissioner Betty Baez, Commissioner Alfred Williams, Commissioner Gail Mason,
Abstain.
okay. We have one abstain. How many absent? 1, 2, 3 absent, and the rest 4 yes.
Thank you. Item number 2, I think the only comment was made by Commissioner Munoz to replace Gutierrez as being present and replace with Munoz. So with that correction, I'll make a motion to approve item number 2. Do I have a second?
Munoz, I second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Robert Torres,
Aye.
Vice Chair Carol Mueller,
Aye.
Commissioner Hector Diaz, absent. Commissioner Sherry Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jennifer Gutierrez,
Aye.
Commissioner Cecilia Munoz,
Aye.
Commissioner Betty Baez, absent. Commissioner Alfred Williams,
Aye.
yes. Commissioner Gail Mason,
Abstain.
abstain. Okay, so we have 1 abstain, 2 absences, and the rest 4 yes.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to new business. Item number 3, which was my request for an update on the Homelessness Coalition and the group and participation by the city with that coalition.
Thank you, Commissioner Torres. Now, in regards to the group that the council participates in, I don't have much of an update for that, but what I can do, if I can ask your permission, is I would like to give you a little bit of an update regarding some of the actions that council has taken place with LASA. Are you comfortable with that, Chair Torres?
For now, but at some point, we would want to know if that's either continuing to move forward or has that been discontinued, at least something to that effect where we kind of know if that's even being pursued. But that would be appreciated if you could give that update.
Okay, your direction is understood, or your recommendation is understood, Chair Torres, and I'm just making note of that the next time you would like an update as far as whether or not that group is still functioning, and just a status regarding that. But what I can tell you regarding LASA is 2 things. The first one is at its December meeting, the city council had a presentation by LASA and requested from them an update along with proposals regarding the work they would like to do moving forward. I know that there has been some discussion around accountability through the county's homeless measure expenditures and how a lot of those programs are being provided in the communities. To piggyback on that, so this is the second part of that update, is that LASA typically once a year has their homeless count. For this year, it was postponed until February, so until this month. Originally, it was slated to take place back in the month of January. The reason for the postponement really just had to do with the COVID-19, or excuse me, the COVID and the Omicron rates in LA County. So out of an abundance of caution, LASA decided to go ahead and postpone the count until February 22nd. The city of West Covina will be participating in that count. Once again, the hub for it, excuse me, or the meeting place for it will be the Cameron Community Center, and a proposal was given to the city on the types of actions as well as accommodations that LASA is requesting. So the city has scheduled social media posts and has is accommodating LASA's request to help recruit volunteers. You, of course, are also encouraged to participate should you wish to participate as a volunteer, but you will see social media pushes as well as outreach efforts to assist with volunteer recruitment so that we can have a successful homeless count. So that is what I have for you this evening.
Thank you, Roxanne. Any questions from any of the commissioners regarding the update for LASA and the homeless count? Did we have a date for the February homeless count, Roxanne?
February 22nd.
Great, thank you.
I just have a comment. This is Commissioner Munoz. On our agenda, listed under upcoming events, is the information that the public would need in order to volunteer for the homeless count. So far, the city of West Covina is allocated 80 volunteer slots. Of the 80, only 25 are filled as of today. So if the social media campaign can hit the ground running, I think it would be appreciated to have more volunteers and actually put a spotlight on the importance of the homeless count to the city in terms of long-term planning. That's my only comment on that. However, with regards to the update on the Homeless Coalition, although it's already been said by Commissioner Torres, I believe that a more detailed update on the status of the city's participation in that coalition is needed, primarily because we have not been able to receive an update and we have not actually met. So it's becoming a little bit more important than not. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so with that, let's, we don't need a motion for item number 3, it was only a receive and file, or should we make a motion? I'm assuming receive and file, so we'll go ahead and move forward with item number 4, which was a discussion requested by me regarding the cost related to free youth sports and after-school programs, providing those free of charge to the residents. And my point in I guess suggesting or requesting this to be discussed was to try to get some feedback from probably you, Roxanne, on what that would entail and what that would take, and ultimately what it would cost to provide a program of that magnitude, where all our services for after-school programs and youth sports would be free to the residents of the city.
For clarification regarding, I understand the youth, the after-school programs regarding the youth sports. When you say youth sports, are you thinking traditional recreation, or are you thinking, let's say, like your little leagues? What was your thought?
Yeah, I was thinking about actually both, but primarily the leagues. So our soccer, because I know they're run by nonprofits, so that it would be some sort of collaboration that would need to take place, I guess, between the city and these nonprofits that run our leagues. And then in addition to that are also the classes that are offered in our programming. Our prior to, I guess, you arriving here a few years back, we've had that. I think it was called, I forget the program we would send out with all the sports and, right, the Discover. Okay, and those as well. So it's probably a wide net, but it would include those classes and programs and the youth sports that are basketball, soccer, baseball, and any other sort of rec sports that we have, softball.
Okay, I understand. So one of the things that, if I may, through the chair, one of the things that I want to point out, or just to make the commission aware of, is that the city at this moment is going through a fee study. And so this particular agenda item is very timely in that we're taking a look at all of our costs, as well as the fees that are currently being charged for the various services, and we're not just talking community services, we're talking citywide. So this, in my mind, is related to that fee study. And then regarding your questions about the youth sports, that's something that we would need to work with the youth, with the nonprofit groups individually, to get a better understanding of what types of what they're collecting in terms of registration, what they are expensing out, because there are fees that they too would have to pay to, like, their parent organizations, their bigger organizations, in order to continue to function. So when you're talking about free programs, free programming in terms of those like little leagues and football and softball, are you thinking free registration? Is that what you're thinking?
I just wanted to get some ballpark estimate or rough order of magnitude on what that would look like, just to have that figure and maybe some sort of schedule eventually that can show us what that would cost to the city, and then what, if it's feasible, and if so, like what the steps be involved in actually achieving something like that, where we could provide for services free of charge for residents.
Okay.
In all those categories, youth
Okay.
sports, and then also all our activities.
Okay, to quantify the number in terms of like the recreation of what's offered through, like you give the example of the Discover, that's something that we can quantify. That's something that we can come back to you with those numbers. In terms of, again, with those nonprofit groups, they do control those pricing, so we can put something together. But we will need to reach out to those individual groups just to get that better understanding of what registration is currently being charged for each of those groups, as well as how many kids they're bringing in. Because I would imagine that if we were to offer those programs, or if those individual leagues were to offer those programs for free, they would still need to find a way to bring in those funds.
Right. I think eventually we'll figure it out, because I know the devil's always in the details, but I would imagine that it would essentially be replacing the funding that they receive from registration fees with, because it's my understanding that their primary funding source is registration fees, and they have an agreement with, I think, the city or any other agency that they're leasing the land or the field from. So that would kind of be the idea, to kind of get an understanding of what that number is, whether it's even feasible for the city to do, and then what steps we would need to take to make that happen.
Okay.
And yeah, I definitely don't want to make this one person conversation, so I'm really eager to see if anyone has any sort of comments, ideas, suggestions, questions, any other commissioners on the topic of offering sports for free for residents.
I would comment, this is Vice Chair Mulner, I would comment in having had my children and even grandchildren going through Little League and other events after school. I think that's a huge burden for the city to take on, especially knowing that the city hardly, it can barely go from day to day at this point. I think we're looking at too much. I mean, I would love to see it, but I just don't think it's feasible.
Commissioner Mason, could we get any help from the school district itself? Would they have some kind of a program or money available for helping these kids?
That's a good question. I think that might be an area we could look into, Roxanne, as well.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair Torres. This is Mike Cressup. I can't speak on to whether the school could help or the school could not help, but what I would like to pass along is that the school is not giving their facilities to the leagues or to anyone at no charge anymore. That's how they're taking their facilities and taking care of their stuff. So just giving you that piece of information. I don't know if it is there or not, but currently they do charge the leagues. They use their schools for practice facilities and other things, and that's caused a change in how leagues do their business and how they look at things as well. So don't know if they would or wouldn't, but currently they are charging all user groups.
Well, the only Commissioner Mason, the only thing there is if we would use our park systems and be exclusive of the ones that are already the Little League and the football, Pop Warner, or whatever. If this is going to be a separate sports thing, if it's going to be separate from what we have now, why couldn't we have it on our park systems? Couldn't we use those facilities?
We do. We do. I know one of the Little League facilities is down here at Shadow Oak Park.
Right. So then we'd be in competition if we're not going to be the same. Are you saying that we fund this money to the existing sports programs that are now in West Covina, or is this going to be a separate?
Yeah, in addition to.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's where we're going to have problems then, where we would put these leagues or these kids so they could play sports.
Well, at this point, they already have, I think, the locations and the fields for all the sports programs. So it would just be a matter of investigating what sort of financial commitment. And Vice Chair Molnar made a really good comment about whether we can even afford it, because it would be costly. So the idea here is just to kind of take a look at it and see if we could have a rough order of magnitude of what that would look like, what it would cost. I'm assuming, of course, it would be a high number just because of the number of leagues and the registration fees.
Correct.
And see whether, if that's not feasible, whether we could incorporate a discount, maybe, possibly, but just something to make the participation higher, and then to alleviate the costs on parents and on the leagues, and being able to kind of support those programs as was done in the past. I'm not sure how far back, but I do recall at some point the city was helping in some sense of subsidizing sports, and then at some point the nonprofit took over and was 100% responsible for the fees. But yeah, just a kind of an idea to look at and to see if we could kind of grasp what that would look like and how much it would cost.
Chair Torres, this is Sherry. I'd like to interject. Two things. There's a new superintendent at the district, and I have a meeting with her. I will bring this up with her because they have padlocked all of their community, all of their schools, and our students should be able to use them. And number two, they used to fundraise for children that were underprivileged, and I'm sure they still fundraise. So it's just a matter probably of getting those children connected to the right people.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be great. And then you can hopefully bring back some insight at our next meeting.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments, questions?
This is Commissioner Munoz. I just have a comment to add. Back in our November 9th meeting, when former Commissioner Nguyen was still on board, he had made a request to have an item agendized, and that was a discussion about more events for special needs children and disabled within the community. Now that was way back when, and now listening to the current public comment on the same topic, and also hearing that we're opening up a review of our current events for children, I think maybe the idea should be explored to find out what programming is out there or grants that the city could be able to pursue that might be able to assist in subsidizing some of the expense related to after-school recreation programs. Just my thoughts.
Thank you. Noted. Very good comment. And just to remind everyone about like the exact ask, it's for West Covina residents, because I know that from the participation in the leagues that I've had my children in, there's plenty of non-West Covina participation. So this would only be for West Covina residents to be able to participate in our own city's programming and sports programs for free. And then the outside city participants would still have to pay the general normal fee that the league would typically charge. All right, with that, any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move on, and that will be a receive and file with the notes taken by our assistant city manager for feedback on that eventually. Hopefully within either the next two meetings, you're thinking, Roxanne?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We'll be looking forward to that. So let's go ahead and move on. And Commissioner Munoz touched on item number 6, which is the youth sports within the city for special needs, not necessarily only children, but the whole population of our special needs within West Covina, to have programming and activities provided by the city within the city for these groups. So I don't know if there was any sort of input or investigating you did, Roxanne, on this item, if you wanted to provide anything, or we could just discuss it.
Yeah, I would like to hear some discussion. I do have some thoughts regarding grants, as well as reaching out to some of some other nonprofit organizations or even CBOs that offer that kind of service throughout the San Gabriel Valley. See what the possibility of partnering with them would be. But those are some of my initial notes I'm reviewing right now that I had written down. But I am interested in the discussion.
Perfect. That's great that you've done that so far. That's a good start. From my understanding, as many of you that were on the commission and know, Commissioner Nguyen is the one that asked for this to be agendized. And like I mentioned earlier, it would be for the entire population that we have of our special needs population, not necessarily only children. And some of the ideas I thought about were creating an event, at least one annually, maybe two, maybe three, that was specifically oriented and geared towards our special needs community, and providing them with the accommodations and also the community outreach aspect, making sure we touch base with all those nonprofits and other organizations that are within West Covina and surrounding West Covina that we could partner with and collaborate with. And we could even develop a needs assessment. I know we've done that in the past for other topics, where we actually reach out to all these organizations and we try to determine what need is out there, what particular groups that we're serving, and then eventually develop a plan, right? A plan of action, not necessarily putting on events, sporadically or off the cuff, just creating something, a plan of attack for development of a special needs event programming. And then eventually one of the other ideas I kind of thought of was creating a working group, which could be consist of maybe even commissioners, members from our special needs community, other organizations, and that working group could be the driving force behind creating some program like that. And that's kind of the thoughts I had on the topic. I'm happy to hear anyone else's comments, questions on special needs events in the city.
Well, Commissioner Mason, probably Cameron Park, since we have the inclusive park, there would be the place to start the information coming from. But we need to know the numbers. How many people do we actually have in West Covina that would take part in this before we really go gung-ho? I mean, if the city could send out a letter or something that we're thinking about adding this. Are you interested? Can you get a hold of us? And what are your needs? We need to know. There's going to be a million different kinds of needs.
I agree.
Commissioner Torres, this is Mike Cressup again. Just also wanted to let you know that, prior to COVID, we did everything we could to make all of our programs all inclusive. Make sure we make all accommodations. On top of that, open our facilities to groups that need things like that. Cameron, during the daytime, was a place that residents with special needs would visit and participate in the use the gymnasium and do those things. So not always having a program, but there are things that the city does. We definitely try to do. We also have our CAPS program that utilizes our senior center as well. So there are programs that we currently do work with, and obviously, as Roxanne said, we will look for alternatives and grants and things we can do that. But we are trying to accommodate who we can when we can now. Just want to make that clear as well.
And if I may, Commissioner or Chair Torres, just to piggyback off of what Mike had just said, one of the things that we'll also do too is, we've got to look at our agencies that oversee this, that govern this. So working with the Department of Development Services and reaching out to our regional centers, because the regional centers are a great resource as far as numbers are concerned too, trying to understand how many people are utilizing their services so we can get that that figure that you're looking for, as well as becoming more engaged with our regional centers, so that we can be a good partner to them and provide those services and enhance what's already being offered. So there are resources out there, and we will do our due diligence in reaching out to those agencies and organizations.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. I definitely agree with it. So any other comments, questions from any of the commissioners? All right. So last few words from me would be kind of to focus in, I'm glad we are, making all of our events and attempting to make all our events inclusive. But from what I remember hearing from a lot of the community members online through social media, and then also from public comment today, and then our meeting earlier this January that was postponed, was that the need for inclusive, specifically driven special needs events rather than all inclusive, right, where we have the entire community mixed in, something that provides, say for example, the autism community to have an event at the senior center, and other special needs groups that can kind of collaborate with the groups in the surrounding area. So one of the parents that did attend last meeting did, after the meeting, indicate that a lot of the times they had to go outside the city for these events, other counties even, sometimes hours away. So something that was specifically geared to a need in the community, a special needs in the community that welcomes them, and is a collaboration with other organizations that already are doing this work.
This is Commissioner Munoz. Commissioner Chair, I just want to add to your comments. We have the spring event that's coming up in March. It is being held at the Sportsplex, and this would, just my thoughts, it would be a great opportunity to reach out to some of our already established agencies, maybe offer them a booth or an opportunity to provide community outreach, public information, and for the city to get to know our partners in that kind of open community environment. Just my thoughts.
Great idea. Completely agree.
We will, if I may, through the chair, if I may, we will reach out to our local community, and we'll also network with the San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center. They will have a list of service providers and nonprofit organizations. So that's when you said that's where my mind went, and that's what I'm looking at right now. So we can, like I said, definitely reach out to the regional centers and get that information and invite those groups, those service providers, to be participants.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, or agenda item number 6, community outreach enhancements. So this was something I asked for a few months ago, and we postponed it to this meeting. So it might be a fairly long conversation depending on everyone's input, but my idea for asking for this item to be agendized was to see how we could improve our community and outreach and engagement process. It would be a broad, I think, community outreach and engagement process that covers all community services. So not necessarily just special events, but everything the community services division does, and see if we could develop some sort of uniformity in how we do things and how we outreach and how we interact with the community. I've seen different guidelines in different agencies, either local, state, federal, where they kind of have their master plan of community outreach and engagement. So that's what I was kind of looking at, to see if we could either have something like that created internally that would kind of be our guide for staff, especially when staff changes over and everyone has to learn how to do things again. It would be helpful to have some sort of guideline adopted within the city that kind of lays out how we would go forward with community outreach and engagement for all our events and all our processes, even projects and everything community service related. So that's where I was kind of leaning towards, to see if that can be developed. But of course, I want to get everyone's ideas on community outreach and enhancements and what your thoughts were as well. All right, no other thoughts. So I get to,
Commissioner Munoz, I just have a thought. I think the part of our challenge right now has been the pandemic and trying to actually engage with the community has been remarkably challenging, I should say. And I think that if we use social media to our advantage, that just keeping it simple, maybe reaching out to the public, giving them updates on some of the key activities that the commission has been working on, that it just might be helpful. It's a very small step, but in light of being hampered by the pandemic, at this moment, I really can't think of anything else. We can announce ourselves as going out and having coffee with the community and being available, maybe outside of a facility to chat with folks. I personally, and I know Chairman Torres, you have as well, as I'm sure other commissioners have, oftentimes when you just kind of go out into the community, it's amazing what type of information you get, and you become a little bit more educated about the needs of our community in the different parts of the city. So at this point, I think I would just recommend that we try to keep it doable, achievable, and as simple as possible using the tools we have. Those are just my thoughts.
thank you.
I'd like to say something. Carol Molnar here. I think that we can use some of the, some of the things that are going on in West Covina, like the spring thing in March, to take our commissioners out there to meet people. We should wear our shirts. We should have our business cards, our badges, so that the community actually knows that we exist. I'm willing to bet that probably 95% of our population don't even know that there is a place to go other than city council meetings. If we talk to them and we kind of get a feedback from them, even at the in the park, the music in the park, be out there and be available to our community.
Completely agree. Good point. Vice Chair
Carol,
Mulder.
I agree completely. We need to be visible and identifiable and engaged.
You know, one thing interesting is at this point in time, I don't really know any of you, other fellow commissioners. Y'all seem like really nice people, but if I wanted to go to something, I wouldn't know how to contact someone else to see if they want to go with me. You know, maybe we should have a way of getting to know each other a little bit better. All we do now is share ideas, well, to the benefit of West Covina, which is great, but I think we can do so much more if we know where our strengths and our weaknesses are.
Good point.
Okay, I have Commissioner Mason. I have no idea if we could even do this, and I couldn't because social media has West Covina residents or West Covina neighbors or West Covina this and that. I don't belong to them because I can never figure out how to get on them. That doesn't mean anything. Couldn't we put information? I don't know if the city would like that though, on these different places and let them know what we're doing. I mean, there they are. There's like some have 1,000 residents. If we could put something online with their whatever you call it, they would see what's going on, and we could engage with the community at least by social media, if not, face to face, like would be the best. Like Carol Molnar had stated, I think that's the best idea. But if we can only do this, can't we try this?
I think Twitter, this is Commissioner Munoz. I think Twitter would be a super simple step. Whatever projects we are working on, or if we are agreeing to meet somewhere to discuss an issue, I think Twitter is easy. You don't need a whole lot for Twitter. It's a quick
but
message.
Twitter, I'm thinking about just West Covina, and these residence places are only residents. So on Twitter, I don't Twitter, but that's so I'm just to let you know. Everybody's on Twitter. Do we have like a special spot on Twitter that only West Covina residents would go to, or can we use their own websites or whatever those things are? West Covina neighborhood watches. You know, neighborhood watch. Does the city have the names of the ones that do the neighborhood watches? Who's the manager of each street? There would be a name for us to start with. Names.
Gail,
we could get
that's evolved. That's evolved into next door, I think. I really do.
Oh,
People
is it?
watch out for themselves.
Yeah, and the ideas that are being suggested are really good ideas, and I agree with every idea that was thrown out there so far. So the idea behind the agenda item that I wanted to put forth was kind of trying to consolidate those ideas into a document, like a community outreach document that could kind of be like our guiding light. Because, for example, when Assistant City Manager Roxanne came in, she had her own experiences with a community outreach. Maybe somebody else had their experiences, and so many cities do have different approaches to how they reach out and engage the community. So if we had some sort of living document that was called the Community Outreach Guidelines and Engagement Guidelines for West Covina, that said, for example, for a particular event, it would have all the media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, listed as options to advertise, and how often we should advertise, like once a week, have these 2 or 3 community meetings, send out these flyers for this case, for that case, something that would become routine and residents would get used to. So if that was developed, they would have some sort of recurring engagement activity that they could always look at. So let's say they passed the mall, and every resident, after 10 years of advertising on the mall's marquee there, the signage, they would all know, oh, everything's advertised there, just look on the marquee, or oh, everything's advertised this way. So it would kind of create that memory for them so that they could easily be aware of everything, rather than, at least in my experience, the way that we've done things in the past have always changed. There's different approaches to everything. So residents have no reference to find out what's going on sometimes. We do a good job on social media. We do a good job on our calendar, on our website. It's just something that's more reoccurring, because the festival, the Spring Festival, for example, is a good sample to use. It's been advertised very well. There's been a lot of social media push from residents, from partners on that. But I wish every event was like that, because it hasn't been. So it's kind of like, okay, well, why is this event getting pushed so much? Because I think, like I said, if we had a format where everything was kind of advertised the same, we would have more attendance on our events and more awareness, rather than some things being pushed or some things not being pushed. So we would have some sort of reference for the residents. So that every idea that was mentioned, so your ideas are great. I think as long as we can consolidate them into some sort of document.
We got to figure out how to break the people back out into the community again. I can tell you, before COVID, we had wonderful attendance for the things, the music in the park programs. Wonderful attendance. 4th of July, everything was great. Then they locked us down, and people have gotten out of the habit, and we need to bring them back out again.
I think this is Commissioner Fisher. I think that's going to happen, Carol. I think that events that I've gone to, the Christmas program put on by the Kiwanis, for example, was a huge hit. It was just so fabulous. I don't know how many were there from this commission, but it was well played out. It was supported. There were all kinds of families. Parade route was 3 and 4 families deep. And our own Roxanne was the announcer. The city council was all there in force. There were kids and families and events and vendors, and it was fabulous. So I think that as they lift the restrictions, although LA County is not releasing their restrictions, that we'll see more and more people come back. I think they're very eager to do so.
Then we need to be there to greet them.
We do.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's up to someone else to bring them out, but when they do come, we should be there to let them know that we're here for them.
This is Commissioner Munoz again. Listening to the comments, they're all very excellent. Chair Torres, last week I attended the groundbreaking for Friendship Park, and it was a really cool event. However, some of the comments that I directly received in talking to some of the residents that live in that area, they did state that they did not know that the groundbreaking was happening. And so because they sort of very loosely, they hang out at the park, and they saw the setup is when they approached the event. So my question, with all due respect to Ms. Lerma, is with the community outreach for that particular event, how far did the invitation go for the groundbreaking of that park?
You know, through the chair, if I may, to answer your question, Commissioner, there was a very limited time frame in which So that event was scheduled both in accordance with the construction schedule, because we do want to make sure that we get that equipment installed and available and open for the public to use. And then balancing that out with, again, just, you know, when we would be able to do it. So it came within a very short amount of time. You know, I hear the comments that you're saying. You know, we do have more time when it comes to as far as an opening is concerned. Typically, your opening is going to gather more interest from the public as opposed to just a groundbreaking. Groundbreaking is, you know, mostly ceremonial. A grand opening is a little bit more fun. You're going to have more foot traffic. You're going to have more kids. As far as social media is concerned, I'm just going to take a look at the social media hits right now. It performed relatively decent. The good news is that we did get some positive press in the Tribune. So there was a printed article with a photo about that particular event. But I do hear your comments as far as, you know, outreaching more to the community to invite them. That is a neighborhood playground. And so we can utilize different tactics in inviting that community and the community as a whole to when we do have a groundbreaking, or excuse me, not a groundbreaking, but an opening for that particular playground.
Thanks for the reply. So back to Chair Torres, I totally agree with you that we should work on establishing a guideline or a blueprint or somewhat of maybe a standard where when there is an opportunity for community engagement, that we as commissioners, we can do the mental checklist in our heads. Is this event being advertised by the city via Twitter, or should we do our own social media outreach by sharing the event with people in the community that we know are vested in the activities that are going on, especially in their own neighborhoods. So I totally agree with you. Just a blueprint, guideline, nothing, not a dissertation, but just maybe some bullet points that we should all check as commissioners, that when we're hitting a public event and we're representing the commission, we're representing the city, we're representing, more importantly, the community. And when the community isn't involved, then that kind of falls on our responsibility as well. So I agree with you, Commissioner Torres. We do need a a blueprint or a guideline. Those are my comments. Thank you, Ms. Lerman.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. Did you have anything to add, Roxanne?
Just you're welcome.
Okay. All right. So I would say that if everyone's okay with it, I know that we've been receiving and file most of these items, but on this one, I would ask Ms. Lerma if it's appropriate to make a motion for that, or do we kind of just request it and then it'll be created? Because my idea was maybe making a formal motion to have that created, maybe a little bit more extensive than what Commissioner Munoz was mentioning, where it would be a, I guess the official title could be Community and Senior Services Outreach and Engagement Guidelines, maybe like an actual document that's maybe 2-3 pages, 10 pages, however many pages it takes, where we could have some sort of recurring theme on all of our activities as far as community engagement goes. Regardless what we do, that community engagement should be a checkbox on every activity that I guess we would consider the public being involved in, like the playground and every other activity that we are seeking public participation in. And I know that the Community Senior Services Commission meeting and City Council meetings are generally like the forums we invite the public to come to, but I think we need to do more than that, because honestly, a lot of people don't have the time or want to attend those events.
I understand. I think if you're making a recommendation, I think it's helpful to, if you would prefer to make a motion, I think that provides a little bit more meat, if you will, behind the action.
Sure. Okay. So the formal motion would be to direct staff to create a community and senior services outreach and engagement guideline document. So that would be my motion. If I have a second, feel free to unmute yourself.
Second. Carol Mullner, second.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Robert Torres,
Yes.
Vice Chair Carol Muller,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherry Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Jennifer Gutierrez,
Yes.
Commissioner Cecilia Munoz,
Yes.
Commissioner Alfred Williams, Commissioner Alfred Williams,
He might need to unmute himself. We might have lost him.
Commissioner Gail Mason.
Yes.
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 5 yes, 2 absent, 1 vacant, and 1 no answer. Thank you.
Thank you. So that passes. We'll move on to item number 7, which is the discussion on the city's efforts for the removal of graffiti and the process that's involved with that. And I believe we have Assistant City Manager Lerma, who's going to provide some report on the graffiti.
If I may, I'm going to ask that Superintendent Mike Cressup assist with this particular agenda item. I think it's helpful to have his voice on this one, because he sees it every day. He has the understanding of how the process occurs, how quickly it comes down, and what the city is currently doing. So I'm going to ask that Mike.
Good evening, Commissioner Torres and Commissioners. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of describe our program. I'll go through the details of how much staffing we put towards it, some of the things that we do to combat it, and then I also have some stats for you. After that, we can open up to questions. Obviously, most of our reporting is done through the GoGov app, and that is our biggest tool. Just like we discussed in all park issues, everything like that, we need all the eyes and ears we can get. In 2020, we received a total of 3,150 graffiti reports. We abated 66% of those in 1 day, 19.3 in 2 to 3 days, and then so on and so forth. We try very hard to get to everything within 48 hours. That's our goal. Take care of all graffiti in less than 48 hours, but a max of 48 hours. We don't always make that happen, but that is the goal. Prior to September of 2021, we only had one staff person working graffiti all the time. Now, currently, we have 2 staff people working 5 days a week, and then if we have a very heavy workload, we will also supplement on Saturdays or Sundays with overtime. So we try to get to everything as fast as we can, and be as how do I want to say this? Make sure that we're doing as good of a quality job as we possibly can. Try to make sure that we're not spotting, that we're matching paint. We're working very hard trying to make everything uniform. Make sure that our public spaces, that we provide the paint and the colors that we have in stock, so we don't have to wait longer to speed up the process of cleaning that up. Also want to remind you that we do not do private property. We only abate public property. So there are things sometimes that people report to us that we are not able to get to. We report it to them, and obviously if it becomes a bigger issue, it goes to code enforcement. But we strictly handle public property. Graffiti can be, it could be from someone just wrote in pencil on something to entire murals and walls. There's locations that we could hit on a daily basis if we had to. So in 2021, you can see the stats. We had 33,780 reports of graffiti. Almost got 50% of it done in a day, over 70% done in 2 to 3 days, so on and so forth. Like I said, there was one guy on that until halfway through that year. So as you can see, the Go app's been becoming more popular, and we've been receiving more requests. As of January, in January of 2022, we've received 295 requests. You can see the stats on how fast we've gotten to it, kind of see the location. Just want to reiterate that we are trying to make sure that we do entire sections, not blotchy, not spots. I know that's been complaints before that we just don't match walls and we just do little spots. But we're trying to do whole sections of walls, trying to attack the areas that we know that we have regular issues and get ahead of the game there. Depending on workload and what's going, sometimes it's not always a possibility because, like I said, there are some places that no matter how many times we paint it, it's back the next day. The Go Request app is a very big tool for us because sometimes people will report something, we've painted it, it's been hit again, and then they'll question us and say, hey, you didn't get that, you didn't hit that spot on, we have across the street, Francisquito and Rama, that we just had an incident like this. It's a wall that gets painted regularly. Well, we track, we take pictures. The app takes pictures, has locations. Our staff are trained to make sure that they document that, send the picture back that it was abated. So we try to keep track of that to make sure that we can show that we're accountable and do those things. Other than that, that's the pretty brief rundown of our program. I don't know if there's specific questions, anything specifically I can answer for you, but the majority of our program is two full-time staff, 5 days a week, and we supplement when we need to. And if you have any other questions, I'll open it up to you now.
I have a couple of questions, Chair Robert, if that's okay.
Sure.
So thank you for your report, Mike. Do you ever put together volunteer groups?
We do work with groups. There's community outreach and things like that. So when we are approached or we work with someone, we try to find projects that can be worthwhile and we can make an improvement in the community. Long stretches, make sure we make a whole section match. So we've done it that way. We've also provided paint and materials to groups to take care of parks and things of that nature. So the answer is yes. We need all the help we can get, and we definitely take advantage of what we can.
Okay. How does one go about volunteering?
At this point, it hasn't been on an individual basis. It's been more group basis. But if someone's interested in volunteering, they can reach out to myself or Deb, and then we can put them in contact with the groups. Kiwanis does a lot of community outreach. There's been Lions Club, separate groups. So we can, we don't have an individual basis, but we can get them in contact with groups that are doing that work.
I understand West Covina Beautiful does a lot, and I'm wondering if it's in conjunction with the city.
West Covina Beautiful does work with the city, and they do a lot throughout. For example, they, one of the parks they work at is Aroma Parkette. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's just down the street from Gulfster Park. So that's a park that they personally watch after and go out, trim the roses, and stay on top of some of that stuff. So yes, they do work with us. They are a group that works with us.
Great, thank you.
I have a question, Gail Mason. Do they still, the students at the high schools still have to do community service hours, the seniors every year? Couldn't we incorporate something from the high schools?
Commissioner Mason, first, it's very great to have you back. Love working with you. Glad you're back.
Thank you.
And, obviously, when people reach out, it could be Eagle Scout, it could be Boy Scout groups, it could be high school for community service. We try to help wherever we can. So I definitely think that is an avenue that can be, that's an avenue that it could help and and work towards something for graffiti abatement.
Absolutely. And with the new superintendent, she might be all for that.
I'll put that on my list when I speak with her.
Yeah, good idea.
One thing that I do want to let you know and make sure that, we talked about that we only abate public property. The other thing I want to talk about is the Caltrans Corridor. So North Garvey, freeway entrances, things like that. The city we do not abate on the freeway, and we also don't do the walls on the side of the freeway. So that gets reported to Caltrans. So if we have issues, we push and do what we can with them. We report to them regularly. Deb's actually the point of contact for that. She does a great job of getting that information to them and trying to get what we need here in the city taken care of right away. But just wanted to pass that along as well because there's confusion on that sometimes. But the actual freeway walls on Garvey, on both Garveys on both sides and the entrances, the city does not abate the graffiti there.
Mike, Commissioner Fisher again. Do we let volunteers do the Caltrans work?
No.
I can't speak to what Caltrans would do, but I would say probably not. I mean, obviously, freeway entrances and the freeway are high-risk areas.
Well, I'm thinking and I don't know if it's Caltrans property or not, but the new block wall they just built, the non-freeway side. So I'm going down Garvey. I'm talking about South Garvey. There's graffiti all over it. But it's not the freeway. It's that little green pathway that on the outside of the freeway. I don't know what it's called. But there were some homeless encampment there, and there's graffiti all in there. I would guess that's Caltrans, but it's not dangerous, I would think, to go in there, unless there's poison oak or ivy, to go in there to clean that up.
Well, obviously, we don't want anybody acting on their own. We don't want anybody to get hurt. Obviously, dealing with the homeless and, other issues. We want to make sure everyone's safe. The area that you're describing to me, I believe that is Caltrans. Okay. It's right off West Covina Parkway, correct?
No, it comes out at Orange, I think. The Garvey that goes around Orange, there's a few new homes there. Runs around from the VFW to I think Cameron or Orange.
Yeah, it's by the big Dalton Wall. I know exactly what you're talking about. There's a large home. That is an area with homeless encampment that we work with Caltrans on regularly, and we obviously report regularly. That is Caltrans. I can't answer on whether volunteers can work on Caltrans or not.
Okay, fair enough.
This is Commissioner Munoz. I have just a comment and maybe a couple of concerns, of course, about graffiti, but that is throughout the entire city, especially in the bathrooms and using the Go app. I've reported quite a bit of graffiti almost everywhere. One of the questions I have, though, is graffiti that sort of faces the street on Hillside. And I know that the graffiti is actually on a private block wall, and the graffiti is pretty intense. I've been educated that because the city does not do private property, that particular wall that faces our public trailhead would not be eligible to have the graffiti removed. But with that said, and thinking just sort of along the lines of what Commissioner Fisher was asking, how difficult would it be for a community cleanup campaign to just go in there, clean up that trailhead of trash, debris, and then maybe the city could supply some paint and maybe some paintbrushes and a community group. And I'm thinking myself, I would go in there and just start painting over that wall. It really is it's just really a mess when you're hiking along these beautiful, wonderful trails in the city, and to see that and not be able to do anything about it is really kind of frustrated, especially when you've been hiking the trail and you're out of breath and you just want to relax and you can't because there's horrible graffitis there. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, I don't want to say it can't be done because anything can be done. It is private property, so it's a matter of getting the property owner to allow it, and then going from there. So I don't want to say it can't be done, but there is some logistics that would need to be worked out. As far as providing paint and supplies, listen, residents call me all the time and say, hey, Mike, I just had an incident where a wall was painted. A resident decided to go paint over the graffiti themselves, but they painted the area white. So it was a brown wall. They painted a square white because they wanted to cover the graffiti right away. So, we are always willing to provide paint and materials to make sure that we match, that we color match, and we can get this stuff out there. It's a blight on the community. We don't want it there. We could put another 3 guys on graffiti and still have plenty of work to do. So, materials, yes, we could provide. Community outreach will provide, and if we need to work on seeing if a private property owner will let us get on there, that is something we can, that's something that I can work with Roxanne on and see if we can do.
That's great news. I really like that. Thank you. I do want to give your staff kudos, with the response, especially to the graffiti throughout the city. I have noted that the crew's out there immediately, whether the crew is just 1 guy or 2 guys or 3 guys or whoever they are, they're really doing a very good job, I think, given the limited resources and the tremendous amount of graffiti that's out there. And on top of that, what the graffiti represents is a black eye in certain neighborhoods, because in some neighborhoods it does prevent residents from actually just comfortably enjoying a park or a trailhead or a public facility, such as a bathroom. Some of the graffiti in the bathrooms, I've talked to some of the younger children who use our parks, and they're frightened by the graffiti because it's big and it's bold and it's really frightening. So they're afraid to go into the bathroom sometimes. So I think if as commissioners or a volunteer community group that I kind of have already had my mind on, we can go out and just do a little bit of touch up and clean up this one particular trailhead that's on private property. Maybe it's just a start, but those are just my thoughts about graffiti. But again, thank the staff for what you do out there because it's everywhere. And I know it's just endless, especially over at Orangewood Park. We've talked about, Mike, you and I have talked about that place. And, but that's a topic for a different day. But the graffiti out there is pretty tremendous. So thank you.
So
Thank
I
you.
just want to piggyback on what Cecilia said. You, Mike, the team does a phenomenal job of really getting rid of the graffiti quickly. I just have 2 follow-up questions. First, West Covina used to have West Covina cleanup in May. Is that happening?
When you say West Covina cleanup, do you mean like with Athens, where the trash, where everybody could go take disposable items and things of that nature?
No, well, it was West Covina cleanup where you could put all your disposables at the curb. Then there was a massive cleanup from the city that, you know, they went around, they had volunteers. It was a pretty big deal. So that's what I'm talking about, where you could put all your trash out at the curb, but there were other things happening as well, like you know, the roundups and the paint roundups and those kinds of things happened during this time, and it was 5 weeks with Athens.
Oh, I recall. Yes, the 5 weeks of green. Mira can probably speak to it better than I can, because that it predates me in the maintenance department. Some of that has changed. There's been talk of going back, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but currently Athens provides all residents the opportunity for unlimited bulky item pickup. So instead of doing 5 weeks, if you have things that you need to dispose of, all you need to do is schedule it with Athens. You can call them, set it up, put it out on the curb, and they'll pick it up. So that's been a change. But there has been discussion about other things. And Roxanne, have we gone any more detail on any of that?
No, I don't have any more detail on that. But I hear what you're saying about the possibility of exploring going back to that particular event back in May, where, you know, people rolling up their sleeves in the community coming out. But I have not heard any additional information, no.
Okay, so, you know, if we can, you know, again, that used to be advertised through your bills, your trash bills, that it was 5 weeks in May, whatever your trash day was the day that happened. And but other events for the city was graffiti removal, you know, removal of paint, remove all of that stuff, and it just, you know, get rid of your junk cars. All of that stuff happened those 5 weeks. So if you know, if somebody can look into that, that'd be fabulous. And then just a follow-up question, all this graffiti, do we ever catch anybody, and are they fined, or what happens to these artists?
Well, I mean, council obviously was very proactive in this. I mean, they just implemented a new program or brought a program back where if you catch somebody doing graffiti or you see it, you can report it, and there's a potential reward for that. So that's all you have to do is access, you know, West Covina Police Department webpage, and you can get that information. As far as what happens to them if they get caught, I'm not sure.
This is Commissioner Munoz. This is a question, or I hope I'm not out of order, but this is for Chair Torres. On the subject of graffiti and on the subject of what that means in a particular city for maybe criminal activity or an increase in gangs and the monikers that are all over when people do their tagging and all that. Is it possible for this commission to request maybe the police department to come in and provide us with an update, not necessarily on the graffiti, but there was a question with regards to, well, has anyone been arrested or caught, and then what happens to them? I think because of the amount of graffiti that's in the city and the type of monikers that I've seen, I think I would want to know, does that actually mean we're not only seeing an increase in graffiti because we have an increase in potential crime and gangs? And I think the experts, of course, would come from our police department and their crime stats. If they could just maybe provide us with an update and we could see that visually hand in hand, I like that the city has gone back to give a reward for when you report graffiti. I do know a couple of individuals back in the day who actually did receive a reward for reporting graffiti, although they were kind of frightened because they did have to go to the police department, make a statement and do all that, but they did in fact receive money and they were very excited about that. They felt engaged in the city. So I do like that that has come back, but I also think we're not advertising our reporting mechanisms well enough. We can put, you know, additional signage at some of the locations that are hit especially hard. Granted, somebody will graffiti over it, but I think if we just put a little bit more out there about report it, and you might get a reward for it. Those are my thoughts. Sorry, they were long. Thank you, Mike.
No problem.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Commissioner Munoz. I don't know if that would be possible, but at some point maybe we could approach the police department and see if they have the opportunity to give us any sort of report on how they handle graffiti from the enforcement perspective. I'm sure it's in conjunction with community services because we provide the data and the kind of the heat map of where all the graffiti problems are. But I guess with the challenges that they're facing and the tools they have to address the graffiti artists.
And Commissioner Torres and Commissioner Munoz, what I could tell you is that I do from time to time get reached out to for retribution. So we cost out what our time costs, what the material costs, what the damage is. So, you know, it probably happens 5, 7, 8 times a year. I can't speak to every time, but there are times that we are reached out for, that the city has reached out to for retribution.
Are the pictures I know that the LA County does this, but are the graffiti locations cataloged with a photograph, and then that photograph, that library of photographs is shared with the police in order to kind of, if they say, for example, catch somebody and they have a pattern of the same graffiti, that they could kind of attribute all that graffiti to that one person?
Yes. You know, what they'll do is if there's a location or a date, they'll contact us and we can look up the locations and the dates and give them what we have from that range and that period, and they'll use it, you know, to link things and do other things with it.
So then before the graffiti is removed, the staff will take a picture of every, you know, instant of graffiti they remove?
I don't want to say everyone, but we're training our staff to take pictures of everything before and after, whether it be graffiti, whatever the work order is, right? Accountability is key right now. And, you know, we want to show we're accountable. So I can't say for every piece, but we are trying to get our people to document. Also trying to get them to document if they're working in an area and something's not reported, that they take a picture and put it in the app. So I can't tell you that it happens 100% of the time, but our goal is to get to it happening 100% of the time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That would help. Any other questions, comments from any other commissioners?
I have none for now. Thank you.
All right, so I have a few, Mike, as you would have guessed. So the one thing I was going to talk about, and Cecilia touched on it a little bit, Commissioner Munoz touched on it, the skate park. So I know that's obviously an animal in itself, but like our graffiti removal efforts there, can you kind of go into a little bit more detail on how we're attacking that?
Well, obviously we're working with our Hope team and the police department, trying to do what we can to minimize it. Trying to make sure we stay on top of entrances and things like that. You know, just this week we're out welding gates and doing what we can for access points and things of that nature. But as far as the abatement goes, we just try to hit it as fast as we can. It doesn't always happen as fast as we like because, you know, sometimes we just have a backlog, and painting the skate park takes some time. But that's pretty much how we're handling it.
Okay. So I noticed you shared a map earlier with like all the reports of graffiti. I think that's what you shared, right? It was like a point map.
Yeah.
So my next question is, do we have the ability to we kind of have it scattered there, but do we have the ability to kind of create I think they call it like a heat map where it'll show where the higher instances of graffiti are happening within the city and then have some sort of routine maintenance there, like daily, where that's like so say for example in the city there would be 10 sites or 15 sites that are regularly passed through and checked rather than having to depend on apps and people reporting where we could drive through there and kind of see if there's additional graffiti in those areas because I know there's definitely high areas of graffiti.
Robert, I understand what you're asking. I'd have to talk to Deb about, how much more we can extrapolate out of this. But I will let you know that we know there's key areas we have to hit on Monday. We know we know where we have to go. We know what we have to do. We know there's areas that we could paint every day. And we probably have close to 25 of them. Whether it be walls, whether it be skate park, whether it be Shadow Oak Park, there's quite a bit of areas throughout the city. And so our goal is to get to those, but obviously it depends on the workload about what was reported and what's there.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, if we could do that, maybe check with Deb and find out. And then the next question would be that you mentioned earlier the Caltrans issue. So this issue has been a big deal with a lot of residents just because of the difficulty in addressing those, because determining who is responsible and so forth. So I know in the past there's been different models of graffiti removal. So then you mentioned earlier that we are responsible for painting graffiti on the outside of the walls, and Caltrans is responsible for inside the freeway. But at some point, I know that, I don't know if it was with the city, or I know that I've heard that the Caltrans does allow cities to do that. So at some point, were we painting the outside of the sound walls, the city?
To my knowledge, and Robert, to be clear, just so you know, it's in my time here and I haven't done the research. So if I need to do the research, I will. We have not touched the inside or the outside of the sound walls on the freeway. Now, I'm not saying that we never have. What I'm saying is that, my understanding from dealing with Caltrans in my time here is that Caltrans is responsible for that. We report it to that, and we go touch it as a last resort. So we try to hold them accountable and then make sure that they're responding in a quick manner.
And do you know if there's any programs that Caltrans has that allows us to do that if we wanted to, and they can reimburse us for that work?
There's been discussion of us just doing it and billing them. That has been a discussion, but I do not know. That's something I'm going to have to look into, and I will, I can definitely look into it and get back to you. I don't know if you want to, motion to do another report, but I can get you that information. We can share it with the commissioner however you like. I can find out from Caltrans.
Okay, yeah, we could include that in the ask. I think there's been a few things, so worst case, we could always go back and review the recording, but I definitely want to come back and see if there's any other solutions available to us to deal with the Caltrans, I guess, bureaucracy, and making sure that that is done better. And another idea I was thinking about, in the past, have we ever been like the point of contact for removing Caltrans graffiti? Because in my experience, when I report a Caltrans area for graffiti on our app, like say accidentally, I'm not sure, and I report it, I get a message saying that this isn't city property, please contact Caltrans, and we're kind of left with the task of doing that. And I've used the Caltrans app. It's not as good as ours, not as user-friendly. It's very cumbersome. So then, has that ever been done before where we're essentially the point of contact where we can do that for the residents, where if they do report something on Caltrans property, we kind of take the role to relay that information to Caltrans?
I need to clarify something, but I believe we do that now. we report to Caltrans regularly. On top of that, our engineering department has a direct contact with Caltrans. So if something's not moving fast enough, like for example, we just dealt with the issue on the wall that's back on West Covina. It's in between Valenda and Sunset, right? They paint the wall there. Well, they weren't getting into it within any amount of time. So we report it, we document it, and if we can't get that, then we reach out to our Caltrans contacts through our engineering department, through our engineering firm. I want to make sure that I answer that question correctly, and I'm going to find out about that because I believe we're reporting everything to Caltrans, but I need to find out about that.
Well, yeah, and my idea was like the app. So then if you, for example, report something on the app, if it could somehow be linked to Caltrans reporting app, and that information could just get, sent to Caltrans. So instead of getting a message that, sorry, what you report is in Caltrans, you have to contact Caltrans, it would be more along the lines of your report has been received and relayed to Caltrans, and that would make the process simpler.
I understand the wording. Robert, I understand your point in the wording. I can get to that. I do not believe there's a way for the app to automatically do it. It would be us handling that. So, which, like I said, which I'm pretty confident that we do a majority of the time, if not all the time. So I'll get the answer to you on that, and then obviously look into changing the wording on whether or not, because I understand your point. If we're reporting it to Caltrans, there's no need for you to report it. I just don't. I think we'd want to report. I want to say that we are reporting it, but I think we'd also want to mention to the public that you can report to Caltrans as well.
Right. Yeah, and I have their app too. So if anyone does it, they have an app that you can report problems to.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. So in the past, somebody brought up the private properties and like walls that are, I guess, considered private property, and we're no longer doing that. Do we have any history of doing that? Because one of my recollections was that in the past, we would remove anything that was in public facing area. So even if it was on private property, if our crews could get to it, they would remove it. Was that the case in the past?
We still operate in that way. Now, we don't leave, even, look, there's an exception. If somebody put something very vulgar on private property and we can get to it without being in danger, we take care of that as well. So I know we're making a blanket statement of we only do public property, but if it can be seen from the street and it's accessible and there's no fences to climb, no gates to go over, we're not going to leave anything that's vulgar, rude, or just, well, we can. So we get that if we can. Does that make sense?
It does, but in my experience, it doesn't, because I've talked to a lot of business owners that have been told that they can't have it removed, and it's fairly accessible right along the sidewalk, but it's considered private property, so then they are left to deal with it. But that's why I was trying to clear that up, like what the policy is, like when would we remove it and when would we wouldn't. So it seems like it's kind of in a case by case.
I don't want to say, look, we don't want to go case by case. We try not to be case by case. We try to be as black and white as we possibly can. But for example, if you're on Lark Ellen and North Garvey, for example, there's a wall there that gets hits regularly, and it says something completely inappropriate. That is private property, but we paint it right away. I can't speak to every business. I can't speak to, like I said, we have code enforcement work with businesses, and we do that. There's issues of trash enclosures behind businesses and other things like that. What I would say is we could take, if we say we're going to do more, there's going to be a cost to that. And it's as it is now, we still have plenty of graffiti. We do very good at responding, but we're not at 100% within 48 hours. And obviously our goal is to get to that. If we take on more, that's going to impact that as well. So.
And now that you mentioned that, you mentioned the fact that we had one graffiti removal person, staff member, and now we have two, and that's helped. So then what, I guess, would be the ideal number for us to be able to address the graffiti within that 48 hours consistently? Is there a number of, staff, like 4, 5, like what we're looking at? Because what we could kind of look at is seeing, okay, this is what it would take. and then we can make a recommendation to the city council to kind of approve those positions. And because graffiti is really a priority, I think, for a lot of residents. They want to see it removed quickly. So I know some cities even do 24 hours. So that's kind of what I was thinking about when you mentioned the amount of staff we have. How many would it take, I think, to get to a comfortable level, rather than, like you're saying
Robert,
now, we're stretched thin.
Robert, I think that's a complex question. I don't want to say a number. And then it's held to that, because, like I said, there's a lot of things. Just graffiti abatement, we're trying to make sure that we're just not slapping paint on walls and stuff's peeling off. We're trying to pressure wash. We're trying to abate without paint. We're trying to make sure that we can get things. I'd love to get to the point that we don't paint light poles. There's a lot to it. I could tell you that we could use 2 more guys, and there would be plenty of work. I don't want to say, I can't at this particular time. I would need to put some thought to it and some time to it, and then a plan on not only what we're going to do, but how good of a job are we going to do repainting everything, because obviously you can't put 500 layers of paint on everything. So I hope you understand that I just can't quite answer that question right now. I definitely know that we could use more manpower to it, but I just can't say a number.
Yeah, it would be appreciated if you could look into it and kind of give us an idea of what that would look like, and then as a commission, maybe the council to look at maybe funding that activity with another staff member or 2, and maybe that could help with like the advocating for quicker abatement, and I guess overall better aesthetics in the city, trying to address it. So.
And to be clear, your goal would be to go 24-hour response.
It would be a compromise, I'm assuming, right? Depending on how much it costs, what staff you need. If we could stick to the 48-hour and do a better job than what we're doing now, maybe we could just stick with the 48-hour, and make sure that it's more consistent, as opposed to what you were saying, where there's instances where we're not able to get to it. I'm not but yeah, obviously 24-hour would be great. That would deter graffiti as well, because the artists that are doing that would kind of be dissuaded by that, right? They would say, well, I'm gonna just get it painted over again the next day, so maybe they would decrease, right? But I know, and there's been cases on the weekends where it's there for 4 days, right? Because you have 48 hours, but then the weekend. So I've seen cases where it's there for 4 days.
Understood. I can tell you that in my experience that it hasn't been that way. To me, painting over to blank canvas, we've seen a lot of that. Now, obviously, I get it. The other thing I want to remind you is that, there's more than just a cost of the manpower. You're looking at more vehicles, you're looking at more equipment, more paint. We buy the cheapest paint. We buy recycled paint. We do what we can to keep costs down, but we do spend a good amount of money on paint as well. So it's more than just the manpower.
And in the past, have we had a sufficient manpower? Like, have we had more than what we currently have? Since in the past, have we had like 2 or 3 or 4 graffiti abatement staff?
I can't speak to prior, because before we just went back, we went back in house just before I took over in maintenance. But prior to that, we had a contract, so we had contracted out graffiti.
Okay.
So I can't speak to the manpower. In my time, we had 1, and then in September of 2021, we went to 2.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I won't reiterate everything. I think, like I said earlier, we could probably listen back and kind of see what was asked of the graffiti item, and then maybe you could come back in the next meeting or the following with a report on all the questions and asks we had.
Commissioner Chair Torres, I'm sorry, Cecilia here. I was wondering regarding Orangewood Park. Orangewood Park has just about everything that Mike mentioned in terms of graffiti. It's got graffiti on the trees, graffiti on the walls, graffiti on the fences, on the sidewalks, on the light poles. Everywhere you look, there's graffiti. So with the when we work with the community hand in hand and hoping that the community reports and uses the Go app and talks to the city about what they would like to see in terms of how to mitigate the graffiti problem over at Orangewood Park. I'm wondering if it would be a good idea if we can agendize a discussion specifically about Orangewood Park and the situation that is there currently. You know, we have the possibility of the Olympics coming to the West Covina area to use the Aquatic Center, which is across the street from Orangewood Park. But it would be nice if we could really showcase our parks and with the Aquatic Center and make it really an inviting place for people to just to enjoy West Covina while they're over at the Aquatic Center. That would include maybe a discussion also about the bathrooms. So those are just my thoughts about, you know, we could spend hours and hours talking about the graffiti and the graffiti costs and all that, but I think we should have a discussion about Orangewood Park because it's really getting hit with your classic graffiti problems, and maybe the design needs to be looked at and the play area needs to be upgraded and things of that nature. So I think it has to be part of a bigger discussion. Those are just my comments on the graffiti and my thoughts about Orangewood Park.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. I guess if a note could be made for that to be a future agendized item, which would kind of touch on the graffiti a little bit. But yeah, Orangewood definitely has more issues than just graffiti. So we could have a discussion on Orangewood and potential solutions and improvements that could be made to improve the park experience there. So, and then if that can be kind of include the uses too. I know that there's a lot of uses there. So skate park, hockey, soccer. I think there's basketball too. So I know that's a big ask because I know that Orangewood's has been on the radar for a while, but just so we can discuss and talk about potential solutions, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, actually, it's such a beautiful, I just have to comment. I go to the school, our school board offices are there right next door to the hockey location. Across the street is Edgewood School and Edgewood Aquatic Center, and the community is vibrant there. They're using the facilities, and then there's Hearst Ranch, and then, you know, City Hall is just a hop, skip, and a jump away, as well as Amonte Hospital. It really would be nice to make Edgewood a partner of that jewel of a location. And it's just a shame that Orangewood has just sort of, it's just there. So I would appreciate a real discussion about that so that we can make some solid recommendations to the City Council. Thank you.
And then one last thing for paint colors, are we able to increase our capacity for graffiti matching by, I guess, having a higher number of paint colors that will give us the ability to match?
Anything is possible. Anything is possible, but what we are trying to do is standardize our stuff with two colors. We call it Shadow Oak Brown, and then we have a West Covina Blue that we're trying to use. We're trying to get it to all the sports leagues, to all the park users, and anybody that asks, and make sure that we're uniform so we have that. The issue is that if you start going to different colors, and changing it. Remember, loading the gun, cleaning the gun. It's not like you just take the spray gun and you say, hey, I'm gonna do Shadow Oak Brown, and then I'm going to do West Covina Blue. There's a process to it. You got to clean the gun. So you're affecting your time and your response. Now, anything is possible, but that is just some of the issues. That's why we're trying to, we're trying to minimize. We have a standard gray that we use. We have the Shadow Oak Brown that we're trying to make all our walls uniform. And if we ever have downtime, we go hit stretches that haven't been touched, that don't maybe not necessarily get graffiti on regularly, but where there's been some damage, mismatch, or whatever. So we're trying to make everything uniform and get to that point.
Okay.
Like I said, we have 3 colors, but if you start going 10 colors, 12 colors, and to be honest, it's part of the problem with private business. It's impossible for us to match. So more colors can be done, but there are challenges to it.
Understood. Thank you, Mike. All right. Any other commissioners have comments, questions on this item?
Commissioner Gutierrez here.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi. I just want to say I use the Go Gov app for the graffiti here at Walmart Park personally, and I have to say, Mike Cressup, thank you very much, because I put on the app and it's gone within 24 hours. So, and they're always tagging this park. So, I mean, it takes a day. So you're doing something right. Thank you very much. So I just wanted to say something positive with that graffiti program that you do have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gutierrez. All right, so I think with no further comments, questions, I think we can move on. I don't know if we'll make a motion since there was many requests. So like I mentioned earlier, and I think if it's appropriate, would it be okay just to move on and then take notes? Okay, perfect. All right, we'll move on to item number 8, which is the community, the senior spotlight program. So I know that we talked about this at our last meeting, but first I wanted to see if there was any feedback from our assistant city manager on the topic.
One of the items that, Chair Torres, if I may, one of the items that had come back and forth regarding the Spotlight program was also to include a possible highlight of that particular individual on social media, whether it was an individual or group on social media, which we can do, also including it in our Discover, because the Discover is set to come back this spring with the publication date in April. So those are some of the things that I can provide you with at this moment in terms of feedback. If there was additional that I have the green light to do, if there's additional comments or recommendations or suggestions that you would like to explore, I'm available to listen and to answer as appropriate.
Well, my hope was to actually see if anyone had anyone in mind and maybe have some sort of vote or determination on that today or tonight and make that recommendation. And then if it does ultimately get approved and the city council is okay with it, then that person or that senior could be highlighted in the April edition, because I'm assuming if we wanted that to happen, we would need to have that information ASAP, right? So it could be, when would that be? What deadline would that be if it was to come to pass?
If it was to come to, sorry, to the chair, if I may, if it was to come to pass, we're working on, I'm just referring back to a calendar real quick, give me a moment. We're working on a mid-February deadline, which we are quickly approaching. One of the things that I would like for you to consider, if this is the direction that the commission wishes to go, is that you do need a process by which you are going to take, whether it's a nomination or some kind of criteria that you're going to use in order to make those selections. So that would be something to consider. So perhaps if the commission isn't ready to make a selection tonight, perhaps it may be beneficial to have a discussion around criteria, and in the coming brochure we advertise what that criteria would look like.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't know if anyone else has some comments or feedback on that. Any other commissioners?
This is Commissioner Munoz. I have really no comments about that. Thank you, Ms. Lerma. I like the idea of having the criteria established by the commission.
All right. Any other comments, questions, other commissioners? Okay, so seeing none, I guess we could move on to the discussion of the criteria and what everybody would be okay with. What I kind of had touched on at the prior meeting was each of us coming up with names, maybe one or two, or maybe more, depending on what we ultimately determine. And then we could either do that on a rotation basis based on commissioner, or we could do it by vote. So we take nominations at a particular meeting, and then we vote on who we would want to spotlight. There's a lot of different ways we could approach it. Those are just two I can think out loud about. But if anyone else had an idea that, or we could, say, the certain commissioner could have that month or that quarter. I think we're going to do the Discover Quarterly, right? So each quarter, a commissioner could have that quarter, and then that commissioner is charged with finding a senior to spotlight and working with that person or that person's family to, provide a write-up, and then we can provide that to Roxanne and have that incorporated into that quarter's Discover, maybe along with a picture. So yeah, there's multiple ways we could go about it, but those are just some thoughts. Does anyone else have ideas of how we can do the Senior Spotlight program?
Commissioner Munoz, it sounds relatively simple. I like that particular idea.
I like it too. This is Vice Chair Carol Molnar. I like it in that I just learned that one of our seniors who was in the SHOP program with the police department and had been very active in many of the different organizations in our community, she just recently passed away. And I wonder if that might be something we'd want to approach. Or, we've also got, we have so many seniors that do contribute throughout the city, the West Covina Beautiful, the Historical Society, and the library. So many, there are so many deserving seniors out there. So we just have to hone in on who we want to honor.
I have 80 fabulous seniors.
You what?
I have 80 fabulous seniors.
Start narrowing it down, Sherry.
So then, are there any thoughts on how we should do it? The ideas that I kind of proposed, like the easiest obviously would be for us to choose somebody individually, and then each commissioner would have like a particular quarter assigned to them for the Discover, and that commissioner would work with whatever group of seniors they know and pick somebody, and there would be kind of no vote involved. That's one way, and like I said, I'm probably thinking that might be the easiest. And I don't even know if we would need to put any sort of guidelines in the Discover, depending on how we would want to verbalize that. And then the other would be to take nominations. And then maybe in the Discover, we could say, please contact, commissioner or whoever the chair is at the time with nominations, and let the public just send emails to either the city staff or commissioner. And then after that quarter, we could compile all the emails and recommendations or suggestions we got, nominations, and vote on all of those. And I think that's the way this senior of the year process used to work as well, because I know that that was a thing for a while. I don't know if it's still a program, but they would do a senior of the year voting. But I know that the turnout for that wasn't great, like the participation in the nomination. Sometimes it was hard to get somebody. So yeah, I guess those would be the two most popular, at least for me. So maybe we could take a vote on which one everyone prefers, just choosing one individually or voting on it through some sort of nomination process.
I think you need to keep it simple.
Yeah.
If you keep it simple, you can get it going quicker. And possibly the commissioner chooses, and it goes from there for that quarter.
Yeah, Sherry, I just remembered what you do. 80, you're right. I think we need to finish this Zoom business and get back to in person so that we can,
That right.
you know, do that. That's not something we want to do on Zoom.
Commissioner Mulner, this is Cecilia Munoz. You mentioned a senior that had recently passed away.
Yes.
And you think that maybe he or she would be a good candidate to be
I
highlighted?
I don't know how much family she has still in West Covina. That would be the thing. But she was very, very strong contributor to our community for many, many years. Her name is Mary Hannibal, if anyone knew her. Lovely, lovely person, and just loved our city. So, but there are, like I said, so many others that are so deserving.
Chair Torres, I wonder if this particular individual might be a good candidate for the April issue of Discover magazine or the newsletter. I don't know. I mean, based on what we were chatting about.
I wouldn't see why not. I think the only challenge would be to make sure that we kind of have an understanding of what that'll look like in the Discover and get that to Roxanne in time, and then also get kind of a consensus from the council that that's something that they're okay with. And then after that, it would ultimately be up to Vice Chair Molnar to kind of either get a picture and then provide a write-up with some sort of list of contributions, a short history of their life and what they've done in the community, and that's about it. I would guess that we could. How much space do you think we could have, Roxanne? Maybe a quarter of a page. Yeah. Okay. So maybe a quarter of a page. Yeah. With a photo and then a short summary of all their accomplishments and contributions, maybe some little history, and I think that's about it. As long as the photo, I would think, is high quality enough to to look.
I'm guessing I can get one from the PD. She worked for them for years, or volunteered in the shop program. So I'm guessing the West Covina PD probably has a picture of her.
Through the chair, if I may, Chair Torres, we obviously, as we city staff, do have a relationship with the police department. Let us reach out to the police department. I'm familiar, although I don't know her, didn't have the opportunity to get to know her. I am familiar with what had occurred, and we can reach out to police, to PD. I understand that there's some urgency to get this into the Discover, so I would just request that you give us a little bit of I don't want to say not a blank check, but just to give us a little bit of freedom to reach out to the PD and put a nice article together, at least initially for this first
That would be
Discover.
awesome. That would be great. Thank you, Roxanne.
You're welcome. You're welcome. If the commission's comfortable with that, we can do that for this first time.
Okay, and then would there be a formal motion that we need to make then to kind of solidify or formalize the program?
You know, I'd like to see the criteria before we take it to motion and how we're going to decide and what that criteria looks like. And if she was a volunteer, or he or she at the police department in the shop program, maybe we just give her, do a write-up for her in the Discover magazine while we develop the criteria for how we select these people moving forward, if the city deems that that should be our responsibility.
Well, Roxanne just said she was going to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, if through the chair, if I may, Commissioner Fisher, to your point, we'll do the initial write-up on this particular volunteer. Of course, we'll reach out to the police department, and if she has family, to see if they're comfortable, obviously. And then moving forward, we can start working on a criteria that the commission can adopt or recommend to city council, and then city council can make that formal action. But at least initially, I think we can get something in the Discover. I think that from my understanding, little that I know, that this person seems to be deserving of some kind of recognition, and it gets the ball rolling.
Good.
Yes, I agree.
So Chair Torres, do we need a motion?
Well, I think we have the framework kind of worked out. I think we'll just need to work on criteria, but I would probably make a motion to kind of move forward with the program, establish criteria as Commissioner Fisher recommended, and then establish the framework of each commissioner selecting a spotlight, a nominee every quarter for each quarter on a rotational basis, and we could figure that out later, I guess. But I don't really have a particular order in mind. We could go in any order and kind of play it by ear. But if we want to formalize that by name or by district, however we want to do that, and it could even be a community member, a senior member in your district, but that might help us kind of hone in, like, how we're spotlighting and how we're kind of selecting that criteria. But I would at least say that I think everyone's okay with that. At least I didn't hear any objection with having each commissioner select a member from the community, a senior member from the community for each quarterly issue. And I think that would spread out. There's 10 of us, so that would spread out over a couple, 3 years, so that we'll have significant time to like work that out as we go.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
All right, so that's good news. Well, hopefully we'll have that on their April issue, and then the next issue we could solidify the criteria. So then I think that would be my motion, Roxanne, to have that come back at our next meeting so we could really work out the criteria on how we're selecting everybody. I'm hoping it would be loose, right? Because we're spotlighting. It's not necessarily senior of the year, right? Where this person is just amazing. It could just be somebody from the community that we think that should be spotlighted. Maybe they don't necessarily do a lot for the community, but maybe they were a war hero, or maybe they run a nonprofit that helps children, or maybe they just pick up trash every day, right? Or anything that we want to kind of spotlight, I think is as positive. They don't necessarily have to be the all-encompassing perfect senior. So, I think we could work that out on a quarterly basis. That's that. Any other comments, questions, commissioners?
I have none on that item.
All right.
Commissioner Fisher's clear.
Beautiful. So I know the motion was confusing, but I hope we can go back and kind of review everything that we kind of talked about and what we kind of motioned on. So we'll just, for formality purposes, we'll go ahead and I'll make a motion to move forward with all those suggestions. If I have a second.
I'll second it. Mason.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Robert Torres,
Aye.
Vice Chair Carol Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Sherry Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Jennifer Gutierrez, Commissioner Cecilia Munoz,
Aye.
Commissioner Alfred Williams, Commissioner Gail Mason,
Aye.
6 yes, 3 absent, and 1 vacant. Motion passed.
Motion passes. Thank you. All right. So let's move on to ad hoc committee reports. Do we have any ad hoc committee reports?
This is Commissioner Munoz. At this moment, I have no updates.
Thank you. With no others, let's move on to commissioners' reports. Are there any commissioners that would like to report on anything? Seeing none,
No,
we'll move on.
I'll report.
Okay.
This is Carol Molnar. There were 3 of us commissioners who had the absolute pleasure last Friday night of meeting our new school. Gosh, I'm sorry, I lost the word.
Superintendent.
Yeah. Superintendent gave us a very, very long introduction to herself. And it was at the Historical Society, which I, again, recommend that you all attend. It's very valuable. We learned so much about our city. And I have to tell you, I think our school system is going to be in very good hands. I was very pleased with the way she presented. So that's what I
second that, Carol.
yeah. Yeah, Sherry was there, Gail was there, I was there, and it was very valuable. So that's it for me.
And so the committee here knows, or the commissioners here know, I'm reaching out to her to do a meet and greet, to bring everybody together to see, just to introduce her to those that weren't in attendance. I'm not sure if she'll be open. I'm sure she'll be open to it, but that's what I'm going to try to work out with her.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other commissioner reports? All right. Let's move on to items to be agendized. I know that we've agendized a few items during our discussions, but are there any items that any commissioners would like agendized for future meetings?
Cecilia Munoz here. I'm going back to our November 9th meeting. There were some items that at the time Commissioner Torres discussed and former Commissioner Nguyen brought up. For Torres, you brought up the update and design for bathrooms at the parks. And I don't believe that we have chatted about that. Former Commissioner Nguyen brought up, he wanted a list of bus shelters after the transit survey audit for discussion, and he had requested additional information. And I think those 2 items are very valid for further discussion.
Thank you. And I do have some information regarding the bathrooms because I pay attention to the city council meetings. I believe that that was actually requested by one of our council members, a report on the park bathroom renovation kind of schedule, plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but is that the case?
I'm not sure if it was asked for at the council level. We do plan on coming to the next meeting with plans for the Cameron Park bathroom. They just weren't quite ready. The bid for Cameron Park bathroom actually went out today or is going out tomorrow, one of the two. So once we get that back, we'll have more of a timeline. But I'm not sure what's happening at the council level. Roxanne might have to answer to that. But currently we have the Cameron Park bathroom is going out to bid. We're in the process of doing design of Walmerado bathroom, and that should be going out to bid shortly. And obviously from there, things will be prioritized, but that's the update I can give you right now, and we will bring plans to the next meeting.
And Chair Torres, if I may, just to coincide with what Mike just reported, one of the things that the council has requested is an assessment of all of our parks, to conduct a needs assessment so that in order to use that as a tool and really start the conversation around funding, securing grants, and just a organized approach on how we are going to remedy the situations and the deficiencies that are in our parks.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I recall, which included the bathrooms, I remember, right?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay. So yeah, that would be good to get that kind of mini update from you, Mike, next meeting. And then ultimately, we'll have that needs assessment at the council level for parks. And then for the trash cans, was that looked into at all, Mike, or how are we doing on that transit survey?
The transit survey is not complete yet. We're getting close to the end. I don't have the complete details. I know that there was I think there might be a meeting tomorrow. Roxanne, are you familiar when the meeting is for the public? Is it tomorrow?
Yes, I am familiar. There is a transit service town hall meeting tomorrow. There's a 2 p.m. in-person meeting, and then a 2 p.m. virtual meeting, my apologies, and then a 7 p.m. In-person meeting. So they are still collecting data regarding those services in order to really get a comprehensive look at what our needs are.
Okay, so yeah, and if I remember correctly, the path forward was waiting for that, and then once we get that done, we can look into the trash can issue, right?
Yeah, trash cans in the shelters. I mean, that's something everything's being looked at, from redoing the shelters to replacing them. So all of that is being done, and all of that is being looked at.
Okay, and then once we have that, then we could hone in on the trash can issue if we wanted to, and kind of have a better idea about what we can do for the trash issue, I guess.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, obviously the transit, Commissioner Torres, just to be clear, the transit audit won't have to have anything to do with the frequency of trash pickup and things of that nature. But what we do with the shelters and how the shelters look, obviously that will be part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I recall that you mentioned that before, like we didn't want to do anything at this point because there might be locations that might be removed, stops that might change, shelters that might be modified. And so I think that's what I remember hearing from you last time, right?
That is correct. That is all part of the audit.
My memory still works. All right, so any other agendized items that anybody wants talked about or discussed in future meetings? Okay, so
this is my Commissioner Torres. I did want to make an announcement. Let the group know, all the commissioners, that one, thank you for all your work on the playgrounds. Obviously, we had the groundbreaking for Friendship Park last Thursday, but Cortez is underway as well. So both playgrounds are underway, and we should be doing grand openings on those very shortly. But you guys were a big part of that, so thank you for all you did. And you do, and we'll update you once we know completion.
Exciting. So there is something I wanted to kind of talk about. It's a big surprise, right? So yeah, I have a few things. Okay, so one of the things, and I wanted to get feedback from everyone here as well. One of the things that I wanted to kind of look at was maybe we have the concerts in the park that at some point became something else. So they're not really concerts at the park anymore. They're concerts at the city hall, or I forget what we call it, summer concerts. So one of the things that I was thinking about is how we could actually get concerts in the park back and moving, and seeing if the council is has an appetite to kind of explore that. Obviously, I know it's more work because we have to kind of bring out everything to this particular site, but the essence of the whole concerts at the park was, you know, utilizing our parks and having that space activated. I know that the city hall's done okay, but in general, I think that the atmosphere is generally better at a park. So that's one of the things I wanted to look at, see if we could talk about it at the next meeting, and see if anyone had, you know, any comments now, if that was okay to discuss. I definitely don't want to discuss anything that, you know, anyone's vehemently opposed to.
So this is Commissioner Fisher. I attended several of the concerts at City Hall. They were well attended, highly enjoyed. You know, it was on the other side of town at City Hall, but we weren't lacking for any attendance. So while it wasn't at the park, it was well attended. I think the last concert was standing room only.
Yeah, and I can second that. I've been to multiple summer concert series, and in general, they're really well attended. They're fun. You know, I couldn't agree with you more. It's a really good.
It was a good feeling, a good vibe. I can't, you know, I like to stay close to home, so.
Yeah, and my idea was just to kind of see if we could spread the love, you know, get that experience throughout the city, especially in the south part of the city, and then just kind of have a presence where especially now that we're utilizing Big League Dreams more, maybe that might be a good site, maybe even other parks like Friendship Park, or, you know, all these other parks that we could bring it to and then activate that space with a concert, I think would help that surrounding community. But
I don't disagree with you, Robert, but I think consistency is important here. People need to know where they're going to go, where they're going to park, how they're going to figure out the venues. And it probably comes down to revenue as well.
Chair Torres.
Excuse me, not revenue, expense.
Chair Torres, I agree with you. I also agree with Commissioner Fisher. However, I think that having a concert in the park actually may serve the local businesses maybe a bit of help that they might need, especially now. So I'll go to City Hall for the summer concert or a movie, but I will also enjoy sitting in one of our local parks and maybe buying food from one of the local restaurants, or having food trucks, or speeding it up a bit. But I agree that the discussion, we should have the discussion about that.
Okay, so we'll do that. We'll just agendize it for discussion at the next meeting, and we can try to figure out if there's any interest in any other parks. Maybe staff can provide us with, you know, parks that they've tried to use in the past. But I would definitely agree with both of you. I think for me, the city hall is like perfect because it's 2 minutes from my house. But I was just imagining that it would benefit other areas in the city if we tried to have it there maybe once a year. one out of the, I think it's one out of the 6 we have. That could be maybe at Cameron, maybe at Shadow Oak, maybe even at Friendship, and maybe even at a park that we really don't use, right? I know that Heritage Park is not as highly used. They have a beautiful green space there, but the parking there is non-existent. I don't think it has a parking lot. So anyway, just to kind of discuss that. So yeah, if that can be agendized, and then I think I mentioned to you, Roxanne, last time, but I just want to formalize it today. If we could talk about the reader board at the plaza and how we could better utilize that, and then maybe once, I don't know if you had a chance to talk to Paulina, like what that process looks like, and then maybe even if we could have some sort of like, standardized, process put together so that maybe we could review what's going to be on there and then kind of be part of that process and making sure that that board is really effectively utilized. So for those of you that I didn't speak to about it, one of my issues is that sometimes we have flyers that are shared on that board, the West Covina, Plaza West Covina reader board that you could see off the freeway. And sometimes the visibility and the quality is really bad, so it's hard to advertise. So my thought was that that is like a very high commodity, like perk we have, right? Where we could advertise city things on a billboard or a sign that people would pay thousands of dollars to have their information displayed on. So I was just trying to see if we could better utilize it and then put things clear in a clear format and really pop out to residents that see it, and that would be another advantageous community outreach engagement strategy. So that's something I was thinking we could discuss next meeting. And I think that's all I got. Oh, I just wrote down something else. Mike, I don't know if you have been here long enough, but do we have any history? We're working with the mall to have like a kiosk or some sort of information center for the city.
Obviously, we partnered with the mall on different levels a lot of different times. I do not recall ever having a kiosk, but I also think that they have let us do different things in the mall. I mean, obviously, we used to partner a lot more in the past. We used to do our tree lighting inside. We used to do events inside. But an actual kiosk year-round, I cannot speak to.
Okay, so that's something else I wanted to talk about, if that could be agendized, and see if because sometimes the mall's pretty generous, right? So if they're willing to provide us with a space, I think that's another way we could outreach to the community. Have one of those little center kiosks in the mall with a little West Covina, sign, and maybe staff it like once a month, maybe, so that obviously we won't have someone there every day, but just to have that link and kind of take advantage of all the traffic, the pedestrian traffic there, to let residents know, and maybe even use it to post flyers for our events and community outreach, kiosks that maybe it might not even need to be manned with a staff member. Maybe it could just be a standalone kiosk. But I thought that would be a good idea to talk about and how we could go about doing it. And that's all I got. So those are ideas I had. Do any other commissioners have any comments, suggestions, questions?
This is Commissioner Munoz. I have nothing more to add, but I do want to thank everyone for their time and participation. I really look forward to our meetings, and I was so happy that we were able to have our meeting and discuss those issues that are really important to the community. So thank you, staff. I really appreciate all of your expertise and all the great work you guys do. And then thank you to the fellow commissioners for participating. I really appreciate it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I may, Chair, getting to know each of you on a new level is important. And I would like to invite you to a coffee and dessert social at an upcoming date. I have to look at the calendar. But just to get to know you on a non-business opportunity.
Yes, definitely.
That's lovely. I'll be
good
there.
idea.
Absolutely, Sherry. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me look at my calendar. Let me see what's good. Yeah, and I'll get back to Robert, and Robert can, we'll collaborate.
Perfect. Sounds like a great idea. Thank you.
Coming together as one.
Great.
Okay.
And just a shout out to your staff, Mike. I know that I mentioned to you earlier today about the traffic signal that was non-operable, and your staff had that repaired by, I think it was 10 a.m. They did an amazing job, and just to give a shout out to those two staff members. Do you happen to know the names of the staff members? Mike?
Sorry about that. I was on mute. I apologize. Commissioner Torres, yeah, it was Rick Shields and Jeff Arceo. They do an excellent job for us, and obviously they took care of that signal and got it back up and running. There is some more work that has to be by an outside contractor, but they got it working. And they also hit 3 other signals today. So they do an excellent job for us, and they get out and about. So thank you for noticing their work, and I appreciate everything they do.
Definitely. Same here. Please send them our appreciation.
I will.
With that, I think we're good. There's upcoming events that everyone could peruse on their own. Unless there's anything that you wanted to mention, Roxanne or Mike in particular, regarding upcoming events, I'll give you a few seconds to do that.
Not so much a conversation about upcoming events, but just more of a friendly reminder just about being in an official capacity outside of meetings, and making sure that we limit those numbers just in order to, to follow the rules. So just be mindful of that when we're meeting outside and not in a official capacity.
Correct.
We'll follow Robert's rules of order. Thank you.
Yeah, it took me a long time to write those, so please follow them. With that, I think we can adjourn this meeting at 8:33 p.m. And I thank everyone for participating.
All right.
Have a wonderful evening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.